But there is a pause button on this keyboard. So let's take a look at what we got. Delete for the BIOS setup, tab to get the BIOS post message, F8 for the boot menu, and the Easy Flash 2 we're not going to worry about because that's a whole different issue that we don't need to deal with. So let's hit delete. Alright. I'm very happy to see this here. Monday, January 10th, well, it's close. 9:51, not quite so close. What time is it? It's 5:52. Then usually you can tab around or hit enter in this case. We're looking at, we're looking at today is the 9th. Want English. You'll see that it says SATA 1 through 6 now, and none of those hard drives are plugged in. We want to configure the SATA as RAID when it does get plugged in. We don't want to protect that, and the timeout seconds will leave that 35 is the biggest. System information, what have we got? BIOS is from October 29th this year. Processor, this confirms what it says on the chip, except the chip says 3.06 gigahertz. This is telling me 3.07. And we've got 6 gigs of RAM in there now. So this is all good stuff, and I'll probably be getting into some overclocking a little later, but not quite yet. AI tweaker, CPU level. Good. Oh, I see. Alright. So changing a lot of these numbers in relation to each other allows you to overclock your system and get better performance out of it. Basically, when someone like Intel builds a bunch of chips, what they're doing is they're cooking maybe a dozen or two on a single platter, and they're aiming at the highest speed that they can get. So what happens is they pull all those chips off and then they test each one individually. If they're aiming for, say, a 3 gigahertz and one of them is a 3.2, they'll take that 3 gigahertz and label it as 3.2. If that 3 gigahertz tests out at 2 gigahertz, they'll sell it as a 2 gigahertz chip. So because of this, even though the speed may not match Intel's or AMD's or anyone who builds chips, their specifications, that doesn't mean that the chip is not capable of what it was made initially to do. Does that make sense? So that is where overclocking comes into the process. If you've got a top-of-the-line chip, then it may test a little better than it can. You may be able to overclock it, maybe not. If you've got a lesser chip, you may be able to overclock that even more likely than if you bought the highest end chip. So there's a lot of possibilities, but if you're going to overclock the CPU chip, you also have to overclock the memory, and there's some math involved. This is some of it here. What I'm seeing is on the timing control, the latency number is 7s. That's good because on the labels it says 8. 7 is better than 8. 6 is better than 7. This is all good stuff to read. I'm really glad to be in the BIOS here, let me tell you. CPU voltage, offset. Oh. Offset numbers? No? Let's set that back to manual. I see, there's all the numbers. So yeah, if you don't want to do the math yourself, then just leave it to auto and you'll get the default performance out of the chip. If you're a power user like me, chances are you do want to get in here and tweak a few things. You got to be very careful though, because the voltage is the biggest limiting factor. You can burn out a chip real easy. CPU, RAM, anything. You give it too much juice and you will fry it. That's bad. So what I'm going to do for now is leave all of this as default. I just want to get in and take a look at everything here. So right now my memory works at 1600 megahertz. I'm going to leave this as auto so we can detect it, but I could potentially overclock it as high as 2400 megahertz if I can get the frequencies down and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of give and take, a lot of testing. Every time you make a change in the BIOS, you got to go into Windows or whatever OS you're using, run it for a while under different conditions. If you get crashes, you've got your settings wrong, you got to go back into the BIOS here, tweak them again, get back into Windows, try some applications, give it a few days, doesn't work, go back again, always back and forth. Now, to some folks like me, that's a lot of fun. To other folks, just leave this stuff alone. You don't need to get in here for any reason whatsoever. So you can see here, warning, setting wrong values in below sections may cause system to malfunction. That just means not work. That doesn't mean destroy it. What have we got here? We've got high def audio in the front. That's good. This is all okay. USB 3, great. It's enabled. That's the way I want it. We do have a plug-and-play OS. It's going to be Windows 7 64-bit. Leave that alone for now. So this is great to have all of this disabled, power on by external modems. I do not want to be able to call this computer and turn it on until I'm ready to, at the very least. So right now, stock, the CPU is running at 44 Celsius. That's a really good range. It's not doing anything though. So once this actually starts processing numbers, the heat is going to jump up. 60 Celsius, maybe 70. The cooler you can keep it, the much better it is. The CPU fan is running at a nice cool 2000 RPM, which is great. I do want to be able to control all this. So here you can see that by enabling the fan control, I can set the parameters for when it kicks in and how fast it spins. Nice little touches here. You can't do this in every BIOS. Did I mention BIOS? Basic Input-Output System. This is what controls everything pretty much. At the very least, it tells everything how to work. Excuse me, chassis fan 1, not applicable, ignored, we'll leave it alone. Chassis fan 1 should be plugged in though, I don't know why that is saying it's not. So let's enable that there. And we'll go for standard. CPU voltage, here are the numbers. 5 volts, it's running at 5.04, that's okay. 3.3, running at 3.29. CPU voltage at 1.2, 12 volt is running at 12.13. These are all good as long as they're relatively close, within a few percent of each other. So we'll escape back. And you'll see over on the right, it tells us a lot of stuff about what's going on and what you're looking at, but it won't give you full definitions if you don't know what the stuff is in the first place. So when I plug the other hard drives in here, those will come onto this list. We'll leave the logo enabled for now. Do not want to flash the BIOS. Basically what that means is you wipe it out and bring it back again. I don't want to do that now. So a nice thing about ASUS here is that they give you the ability to save different profiles. So if you want to try a few different settings, you can do that, and then you can load them all up individually. It's a nice little touch. I've never had that before to deal with. We'll leave this alone, but it's probably something I want to do. As you'll see here, it says plug 2 empty drives into the 6G, that's gigabit connectors. The 2 drives that are in there now are plugged into those. I do want to super speed them because this gives you the ability to basically supersize your drives as far as the speed goes. So I'm going to dig into this in the manual before I really change anything. I don't want to just screw with stuff indiscriminately. What I am mostly glad to see is that this is working. It's really 6:05 at this point, so we'll change that. And it is Sunday the 9th. And I do speak English. So I'm really happy to see all this stuff here. Generally speaking, for normal people, you can just skip by the BIOS. There's no need to dig into here if you just want your computer to work. If you want to get funky and start tweaking around and soup your system up, then this is the place to be, and it's definitely some good stuff to learn. It's not too complicated, and well, I can't say I'll probably do a special video just on this, but I will aim to do a video while I am tweaking around later, and after I've done a lot more reading on this particular motherboard and exactly how things get set up. So with that, we want to go over here to exit and save changes, and yes, that's okay. It's going to reboot now. The changes are being saved. The changes are now saved, and that's it for today. So in the next day or two, I'll have more RAM, more hard drives, and I should be ready to put this box entirely together. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are too. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this series. We got some more coming up. See ya.